that feeling of inhabiting the moment and being aware and attentive to your own heart and to your own core, and being able to be centered and present. So I think really tantra comes down to like ultra presence. So yeah,
Hmm.
and if we can be present for ourselves, um, all to the good, and we can't do that unless we're practicing a decent level of self-care.
Conscious Conversations with Nick and Nitin.
All right. Welcome into Conscious Conversations. I'm your host, Nick Palladino King, with my co-host, as always, Nitin Garg.
Hello.
Hey. And today we have the very special pleasure of interviewing Corey Lyon Folsom. Corey is an author and a love coach. Corey, how's it going?
Very well, thank you, Nick. Glad to be here.
Heck yeah. Glad to have you on. Glad to have you on. I'm just going to read a couple of things kind of about Corey and introduce you to the group, and then we'll go from there. So you've got a really interesting background in your life. You were a professional tracker, an Aboriginal skills instructor, a wilderness guide, and then turned into an NLP practitioner, a relationship coach, a tantric practitioner after what sounds like a very intense spiritual awakening. So we're really interested to dive into your story and kind of who you were and how you've become a coach and author and all the things you have to share. But before that, Corey, we'd love for you to get us grounded and get us centered with some kind of technique just to bring us all home. And then from there, we can dive into love and relationships and anything else that feels alive for us all today.
Great, thanks, Nick. So what I thought to bring forward right now, partly because it's really fresh and present for me, is I call it the emotional home meditation, which I also put in my book. And so hopefully everyone's in a comfortable position. Uh, and so I would invite people to just close your eyes, adjust your posture as needed, roll your shoulders, stretch, breathe a little, sigh, yawn, move your neck. Just create more bit of more physical ease. And now with your eyes closed, imagine a energetic grounding cord as a pillar of gentle golden light that goes from your hips, as wide as your hips, to a place deep within the earth. And just I'll give you just a bit to establish that. My personal energetic pillar of light, I imagine it connected, anchored to a crystal deep within the earth. And imagine that grounding cord is activated in some way. You might say, grounding cord activate, or flip a little imaginary switch over on your ribs. And so it's just got a gentle pull, much like gravity, just a little stronger than gravity. It's just pulling, making sure you're connected to the Great Mother, to the earth that sustains us. And it might help to just feel how gravity is holding you on your seat right now. It's a lot like that. Just you're centered and held right where you are. And allow your breath to just find a natural rhythm. Just breathe easily. And as you take in air, let it soften and relax your body. Feel the air filling your lungs, softening, relaxing, bringing life to your cells. And allow this breath to animate your core, your center of yourself, not just your lungs, but your whole chest is just gaining aliveness from this air with each breath. And when we take in a breath, then we let it go. It's a lot like life. We receive gifts and then we let them go. And take in as many breaths as you need to feel beneath and beyond thinking. Just feeling and noticing the aliveness that comes with the air. And I would also invite you now to allow the feeling of contentment. Allow contentment to be the place where you are. Allow that feeling of contentment to just fill you, whether that's expanding from your heart, whether that's coming down from the heavens, but just there's an okayness, and just allow that. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. Allow yourself to be content. You may also feel the silence that you're inhabiting. I like to think of the silence as healing. Now let yourself be gently flooded with the emotion of home. That I think of home as the place in your heart where everything is okay. That place inside of you of rightness and contentment and a sureness that everything will work out. Sometimes I remind myself that everything is okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end. So just be a measure of contentment is a good thing. You can also attempt to feel your own essence. That there's contentment in feeling who you really are, what you are. A contented essence. It's really about allowing and accepting and saying, okay, why not? I can feel that for a moment. Everything else will still be there. Three more breaths. And gently open your eyes and come back to the place where you are sitting, back to here and now in the outside world.
All right. Thanks, Corey. I really liked what you said. I liked you said something around like the end's always okay or perfect, and if it's not, then it's not the end.
Yeah,
That's a cool line.
yeah, not original. Worth
That's
repeating.
what I tell myself. I'm like, it's always going to work out.
That's right.
It hits
Like, what do
home.
you mean? I'm like, well, because that's what I believe. So,
It always has.
well, great. Thanks, Corey, for that grounding and getting us into our body and getting embodied. So, Corey, we'd love to know a little bit about your background. I mean, you were an Aboriginal tracker, like a wilderness skills coach who became a love and tantric coach. That seems like a pretty big chasm and transformation. So, we'd love to hear kind of about that story and what you're up to now.
Sure. Well, I grew up in small town Maine on the east, far northeast coast. Pretty great place to be a kid. I I did the Boy Scouts. I loved it because it got me into the woods and the mountains. I was lucky enough that my particular troop did a lot of mountain climbing and extended backpacking. And, I was the kind of kid that really didn't have many friends. I usually had like one at a time. And I just spent a lot of time. And I was also lucky that our house backed up against what seemed like infinite woods. And there was a river and all this stuff. And so I just spent a lot of time there. And when and my family was great. And then we didn't really talk about stuff. unless it was cheerful and positive. And so I entered the adult world not having skills on resolving conflicts or having interpersonal relationships with somebody very different than me, like a girl, and so I just didn't speak up for my needs. I went the direction of the over nice person. My friend Kelly Bryson calls it the nice guys, Guise. And so without communication skills, it was of any worth. It was kind of a predictable. Relationships were generally short term, and I also shrank from my exuberance, my certainty. I didn't really let myself imagine what I could be or how I could be, other than some kind of vague, I want to be a great guy or something. And so I did eventually get married. I had 2 young boys, but I wasn't really happy. I was serving everyone else. I was doing this and doing that, always for someone else, not taking care of my own needs. I didn't have a good concept of what it was like to do self-care or any of that. So at some point, I found myself alone. My kids are living in another state, and I just knew I had to be better. And I met someone who really inspired me, and I wanted to grow into the kind of man that she would stay with and want to partner with. And so uh, I hired a love coach, a relationship coach, and he taught me about being honest about my own motivations or actions or non-actions. And so as I became willing to tell the truth to myself, that's when my life really improved in real measure. And so it was basically that I only had to stop practicing everything that wasn't me. I didn't have to learn to be Corey. I just had to get rid of stuff that wasn't Corey. And so that's the most important element to me. And so then, I dove into personal growth workshops, and I studied with different tantra teachers and different communication teachers, conscious communication, nonviolent communication. And it just led me, conversations with other people asking me for help with their relationships ended up kind of sending me to Love Coach Academy, and here I am as a coach and now an author. I skipped over a whole lot.
Cool. A lot of powerful subtleness in there. I'm picking up that we can dive into. Nathan, why don't you kick us off? You look like you're chomping at the bit over there to ask some questions.
Good read. Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, just to bring it home, and a lot of what you described as your early life experiences, Corey, is literally, I felt like you were talking about me. So very similar experiences.
Likewise.
And so yeah, we share a common background, share a common journey, and it's a continuing journey. Even right now, very much my relationship and the health of the relationship and continuing deepening into love and respect and care for each other is very top of mind. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, indeed so. And at this point in my life, I really am feeling strongly that self-care is soul care.
Yeah. And there's a really key tie-in there around this aspect of, we all have heard the famous airplane analogy, put your own mask on first so you can take care of the person next to you. Whereas often the initial instinct is to, especially if you have children, is to help them first. And on the journey of confidence and self-confidence, and you talked about becoming the man that, you know, that your partner would be willing to be with. A lot of times we mistake that as we need to become someone. We need to acquire this external, cool, you know, sleek personality that women are going to fall in love with. And what you, as you go through that journey, initially trying to be that, so you try to be everything but yourself. Eventually you realize, and what you pointed to is, geez, I actually just need to be me, and get rid of the other ways in which I was trying to be. There's no trying to be something if you're just being yourself. And then the right partner, the right, friends even, they see that. They see your authenticity. They see your genuineness. And so I love that you really pointed that out. And I just wanted to share this dichotomy of, we try to be someone else, which actually is a defeating path.
Right. And she also gave me a great gift because she encouraged me to be messy. She's like, messy is sexy. Just be yourself. And if I said no, or not, no for now, or some form of modification, or a no to something, anything, that was a good thing. She's like, oh, he's not some nebulous, malleable, piece of Play-Doh. He's like standing up for something, so that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the shift from being a pleaser, and not being a pleaser, but really owning your own true desires and perspective and feelings.
That's right. And sometimes it was got it, like instant, and other times it's like turning around an aircraft carrier. We'll get there.
It's interesting. I've known lots of divorced men. I come from a divorced family. Something I've noticed, and it sounds like you're talking about it, is that I've noticed that men, after they get divorced, and maybe it's the same for women, I don't know, is they find almost someone that initiates them into a new way of being or a new sexuality. Can you talk about that, Corey? It sounds like you found a woman or partner that actually initiated you into this tantric world of setting boundaries and being strong, and not having that nice guys.
Yeah.
You talked
Yeah.
about.
It's 100% what happened for me. It was a literal initiation. And so I went to my this tantra workshop, and I had really had no concept of what it was or anything. And I had a free weekend, and somebody suggested it to me. So, and then there was this woman there who was like the assistant teacher, who I was instantly, madly, she just attracted me so much. And so I said to myself, I'm not here to find a girlfriend. I'm here to work on me. And so she was the only person I never talked to the whole weekend. And then the last evening, we kind of had our different spaces, and the women pick who they want to do the practices with. And so the men sit there in kind of a bigger area, and they have their eyes closed, and the women walk around, and then they just sit in front of who they want to do practices with. And I opened my eyes, and there she was. And I was like, it was somewhat terrifying. It was exhilarating and terrifying because, like now I have to step up, and, it's not just head knowledge. And so we just, and she could see that I was like, my mind was going like this, and I'm like, oh man. And she did the perfect thing. She just reached forward with her fingers and just tapped my sternum and said, just be here. Like, be here in your body. Just be with me. And so, and that, I got it. And so we like gazed in each other's eyes for a good anywhere 30 minutes to an hour. I don't know, because time stopped being time. And just eye gazing with each other, it felt like the air was removed from the room and replaced with breathable joy. And she had been a tantric practitioner for like 21 years. And so that for me was the transmission of this amazing teacher, another way of describing how it actually felt to me was that the flame of her heart went out and lit the flame of my heart, like one candle to another. And that I felt changed on a molecular cellular level, like my cells had adjusted to like Corey's vibration, and now I could vibrate as me. And I call it broadcasting on your own frequency. And that was the big shift. That was actually the soul awakening that I alluded to, and you mentioned earlier, Nick. And that was it.
Wow. And for anyone listening, and Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, but the technique is you sit with your partner and you can sit on each other's laps and maybe put one hand on each other's heart and look into each other's eyes and breathe together. And if you've never done that, that can be one of the most intimate practices, much more intimate than sex, actually. Corey, I believe that's the technique that you're referring to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's also a really powerful exercise, for lack of a better word, to do that in a mirror and see if you can send warmth through your eyes to your own reflection in the mirror. See if you can you feel and send compassion, or whatever it is you want to magnify. Doing it in front of a mirror is not as easy as it sounds.
No. Can you talk about what happened after that moment, after you, sounds like you got your vibration, your frequency to Corey after you were initiated? Can you talk about the effects and the impact on your life after that?
Well, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks later, I started working with the coach. She was the one that suggested this coach to me, which was great. And so then it was just a high speed learning. And I was so open and ready and excited because I knew that I had found Corey, but I also knew I had to discover how to keep him. And so that was when, I'm learning these concepts of, honesty with your own motivations, speaking up for your needs, saying no in the service of love. And so that's really the track that I was on at that point.
Yeah, that's such a journey, because the old you and the new you is mixed up. There's a lot of patterns. Some patterns are great, they help. Some great habits we develop, and then there's other patterns, bad habits that don't help, that we think sometimes they're us, but they're creating negative results, lower vibration in our relationship, or actually taking us farther apart. So yeah, that is such an intricate journey, and it's not clear. It's not easy. There's a lot of discernment, a lot of self-reflection that has to happen on like a daily basis.
Indeed. And it also helped.
What was that like for you?
Sure, absolutely. Just how you describe. And it also helped that I moved into a really nice place to live. I had my own little studio at the time. And so, new neighborhood, new friends, so new behaviors. And it was freeing, and it was scary. Freeing in that I could say what I wanted to say, and scary because that's also like an emotional muscle, that courage. I call it the courage to be clear in my book. And around that time, another friend that I was just having coffee with, and she gave me this beautiful example of what I've come to term awkward radar. And so we're talking, we're hanging out, and she said, I'm feeling something a little awkward, and I don't know what it is, but I just want to pause and just speak to that. And I don't even remember the context anymore. Just that she paused, pressed pause on the conversation and was like, oh, I want to address what I'm feeling, and then maybe we can move on. So I just, she had the trust in herself in order to use her voice in service of taking care of her own emotional needs. She had the trust in our friendship that I could handle being stopped and shift gears and address something else. And that was really useful to me. And so I get courage to be clear, the term, from that conversation. She demonstrated it, and I remain in awe of her to this day.
This is really reminding me of some men's work group that Nathan and I did a couple years ago. We had a group of about 10 men. And I know for me, one of the biggest takeaways from that men's group was that when we are nice, it leads to resentment. And I think you're touching on a lot of that, and self-resentment, rather than the courage to be clear and speak up. And I don't think people realize how hard it is for people in general, and especially men, to speak up for their needs and have the courage to say no. Me personally, about 2 years ago, I started really setting clear boundaries. And like to your point, I didn't have the muscle that I thought I did. And it started coming out as me being an asshole. Like I would blurt out boundaries, right? Or they would just be like, ah. And now 2 years later, now I've learned to speak, let's say, kindly and lovingly, but also clearly. And that has taken a couple years to get that to really come through in a way that lands well. And sounds like your friend was demonstrating that too. But, I've been on this path for almost 20 years, and it's taken me the last 2 years to really figure out how to have clear, kind boundaries. And that I think you're talking about something very similar.
That's awesome.
Can you talk about how you said how self-care is really soul care? And then maybe we can get into this idea around soul statements in your book and how this all relates to the work we're talking about.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to add on to what you just said, in that I also learned through, other people figuring out before me, who shared it with me, that, it's instead of, when somebody is not doing something well, like a communication you just described, Nick, instead of saying, well, getting all huffy and, well, now I think you're this, or dumb as a post, or whatever, just to say, what you were saying is important, and if you said it in a different tone, I'd be able to hear you better. And it's like, it's like just that kind of communication, that is kind of a template, if you will, is so useful. And because I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to be, the angry jerk. I know how to do it, but I'd rather be a little more graceful. And so if you have a partner who will actually partner with you in communication, then all to the good. So, yeah, soul care, self-care. I just think that
Can I add something
go ahead,
to what you just said?
Please do.
What you just described, I think both of you were touching on, Nick, yourself, and Corey. It requires building a capacity within. There's like a, and I find that I've been able to build that capacity in myself through meditation over the years. Like there's this stillness where you can be with when something is said, and not get immediately triggered, where that considerate, kind, thoughtful response wouldn't come out. And I'm still a work in progress on that. There's still things that will happen that trigger the heck out of me. And I'm still, that continued deepening happens around, okay, yeah, can I create space between what's been said and how I respond to it, even if it triggers me, right? So a statement that I'm very much sitting with these days is, I respond with love, kindness, and compassion, even when triggered.
Love it.
Nice.
And that is the identity I'm looking to create. That is who I want to be, not because I want to just completely change myself, but because this pattern of getting triggered was ruining my relationship and actually not helping at all. And we can always get into finger pointing. Okay, she did this, so I said this, and then I said something and then she did that. But someone has to develop that capacity to be able to say, hey, something that was said or done wasn't appropriate, and like, let's shift versus continuing to go down the spiral.
That is so insightful, and it's really speaks to the heart of, these various, techniques and saying things this way or over that way. That's just the layer on top of this self awareness, this self knowledge, this spending time, whether it's in meditation or in whatever form that takes, to know your own self, know that it's really okay. And I have strength inside me that will be able to withstand the vagaries of life. And it's like in tantra, it's like the techniques, the eye gazing, that it's like, yeah, eye gazing is a tantric technique, but it's in a way not tantra. It's like what's underneath that feeling of inhabiting the moment and being aware and attentive to the to your own heart and to your own core, and being able to be centered and present. So I think really tantra comes down to like ultra presence. So yeah, and if we can be present for ourselves, all to the good, and we can't do that unless we're practicing a decent level of self-care. And because that ability to be present and to respond in an able way, to take responsibility for whatever's happening, to be attentive and just like in this moment, like that's the place you want to be, not 10 seconds ahead or a year behind. So
Right. Yeah. Whereas often we find ourselves jumping to the meaning, reaction, and we get stuck in that back and forth and the spiral.
sure.
I love this statement actually that one of our just previous guests, I heard from him recently. You talked about responsibility, and he broke down the word saying it's responsibility. It's our ability to respond and how we respond. And so what kind of an ability have we developed within ourselves, and the range of responses that we have when a situation presents itself. If we always have the same response, we're stuck in a pattern.
And indeed. And so the ability to respond has to, that's like a layer 2, but the layer 1 is a certain, self assuredness, that contentment that we're trying to bring in with that previous meditation. Like this isn't going to destroy me, basically, whatever this is. Yeah. And so, I based my book Soul Statements or the concept of soul statements on the premise that answers are in your center. And so in those moments when we have this, something was said, something happened, and we're going to respond that so much, or we hear something and we think the next thing, that so much of the time the tendency is to think the worst, to catastrophize. I have this person I know, and I don't call her much, and and so when she does get a call from me, even though I've never had any bad news or anything like that before, I remember this one time she answers the phone. She's like, "What's wrong?" It's like, because I was calling her and I've never called her. So obviously something must be wrong. But that's what all of us do from time to time and to some extent. And, Tony Robbins says it really well. He says, our brains aren't designed to make us happy. they're designed to keep us alive. And so to do that, they're always looking for what's wrong. And that's just natural human, makeup. And so, but then he says the next brilliant thing, which is, and what's right is always available. And so in that's where a soul statement, as I describe it, comes in, where in that moment of, I'm about to think this thought, usually it's like, I just thought this thought of, I can't do this, or I don't know what to do, or some kind of form of, catastrophizing, that you can have this soul statement that you've already thought of previously, that you can have in your pouch or your pocket and say, you know what? And I used to think that. And what's really true is I can call upon the grit inside me, or I have grit inside me. My soul knows what to do. And so that's where you, instead of an affirmation where you're, emotionally inhabiting a future experience or thing, this is an affirmation of, wait, I have deeper resources. I'm made of better stuff than this. And I can remind myself in present time with the truth of who I am and what I am and why I am. And so then this other, thought that was so powerful a second ago can feel more irrelevant. And so it like a emotional postcard from your center.
Corey, can you talk about the difference of an affirmation and a soul statement? And I'm wondering, I have multiple, I'm guessing, of both that I use, but I've never heard that there's a difference between the two.
Yeah. So, well, they're both within the subset of affirmation. I mean, the set of affirmation, and the subset, one would be, I'm thinner, I'm stronger, I'm more capable. That's an affirmation. And it's useful to feel the emotion of that. I'm the bigger version of me. And so, your cells are, and your subconscious is listening, eavesdropping on your surface thoughts. And they're like, oh, we'd better kind of align with that, because that's obviously was true because he's thinking it. And so that's an affirmation, kind of a short version. And then the soul statement is something that is a deep resource within you that you already have. So you're not inhabiting that future. You're reminding yourself of what's really your truth. And so there is strength inside me. My heart is a trusted guide. And so that is used to counteract a less than. I'm less than in some version of that thought, to then say, oh, wait a minute, there's a deeper truth about me that I can, plunk on top of that, create this emotional coherence of inner dialogue. And you can, then your next thought is colored by this truth. And, my body knows how to heal itself, or what's right about me is always available, in something affirming a strength, a resource, something you can anchor to and make your next thought a little better because you've reminded yourself about a strength.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, I use these every day. There's a new one I'm working on that is, I give myself permission to live in greatness. Because I've found I've been shying away from fully shining the last couple years. Does that sound more like an affirmation or a soul statement to you?
I love it. And it's a blend, I guess I would say, because you're permissioning yourself to live as the greater you. And to me there's an implication that greater you lives. It's inside you. You have it. You need to just unlock it. It's not something you need to go gain. You just need to unlock the permission to be it. So yeah.
And then once I'm living in that, then it could like almost shift into that soul statement of this is who Nick is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I also
Like that.
sense
Very cool.
this. I also sense this distinction of, an affirmation, maybe something more about what we are desiring to have, and it's a little bit out in the future somewhere. And it seems like the soul statement, you're really pointing to this essence of this strength or this capability exists within you, and you're sort of reaffirming it. So it's more in the now, in the present. And a question I have actually with that is, like, for example, someone may want to say, hey, I'm loving, or I'm kind, or I'm smart. And then the immediate next thought might be, but I'm not. Here's all the evidence I've built up in my life that I'm not. And I'm curious how you help folks navigate that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not is pointing to behaviors that I've done, we'll say. And so, but there's also should be a realization that, my behaviors are behaviors. I was thinking whatever I was thinking at the time. This is what I did. This is what I was maybe fearful of.
This is who Nick is.
Or looking for. And
cool. Like that. It's very cool.
With the soul statement, you're remembering that at my core, I'm a loved child of God. I'm enough. And I had one coaching client who, just giving him permission to think the thought in a social situation, that instead of going, oh, no one wants to talk to me, which is reinforced because no one's talking to him, and just all this chain of self-doubt. And then I said, why don't you go into these situations, which he had a lot, and just think and feel, these people are lucky to meet me. And all of a sudden, people are coming up and talking to him. And he's like, this is awesome. So, but it's just, a lot of them come down to some version of, I am enough. I'm enough. Just my whatever's in my core, in my heart, is enough. And I also use, with myself, I use humor. And if I think some catastrophizing thought, it's like I'm hearing my head say it, and I'll literally give a little smirk, and I'll be like, oh my God, I'm thinking that again. That is hilarious. And then I insert a relevant soul statement.
I love that. And there's, in some of the coaching work I've done, I couldn't say self-love with people. That was just way too big of a jump. And Corey, I think you've probably seen this. And we've had to start with self-like.
Love it.
And it's so interesting of like, okay, like, well, I don't love myself, but can you like yourself? And Nathan, to your question, there is a mantra that I've been given and shared with other people. And the one I'll use is I love myself, which is very, very, very powerful. But for other students, I've had to give them, I love myself no matter what. And that sounds kind of like what we're talking about. And that can be extremely agitating, because then they go, well, what about this? Or what about that thing? Or what about that mistake? And it's like, yeah, and I love myself no matter what. And that'll really fuck people up. And eventually, hopefully in a good way, but it's like, no. It's like, unconditionally, I love myself no matter what. And you can say these things. I love myself no matter what. Even Corey, you bring it in, like, what happens if I go into a room and I say, wow, look how many people are interested in meeting me today. We were talking to Hunter Pence. He's a famous professional baseball player. He was on a couple weeks ago. And he said he was walking around the locker room saying to himself, like, I'm a great teammate. I'm a great teammate. And he said, then someone came up to him and goes, Hunter, you know what I like about you? He goes, what? He goes, you're a great teammate. And he was like, wait, what? Hold on. What the heck? So it's like, we're, even great athletes are doing this.
Love it.
It's so cool to put this in there.
And I'm super happy that you brought that up, because for me personally, I went through that same process, and self-like was too much of a leap. I had to start with, self-acceptance. So I accept myself, and then I had to go to like, and then eventually love. And so, and the people that were kind of sharing this with me were saying, the goal is to feel I love myself even when I don't want to. Yeah, but I had to start way back at self-acceptance. I accept myself even when I don't want to.
And then where does allowing others to love you show up in that spectrum as well?
After. Yeah.
Yeah.
After you do.
Acceptance is so key. I mean, it is like a bedrock. There are so many things that I bet even the three of us know about ourselves at this point that, consciously or subconsciously, we haven't fully accepted. And that's, I'm saying that with folks that are doing this work actively.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is, acceptance is huge. We all make mistakes. And I'm really passionate about this. I was just actually recently writing about this, triggered from a personal story. And so acceptance is really such a bedrock, because when we can see ourselves clearly, we may not agree with something that occurred or the action or something that was said, but to accept that it occurred allows the opening for us then be able to say, okay, maybe I didn't necessarily love that about myself, but it did occur.
Mm-hmm.
And I accept that it occurred. And now, how do I want to transform this? Who do I want to lean into? But if we don't accept that something happened or that we were a certain way, then it's really, we're just putting lipstick on a pig. And, as much as our intentions may try to line up, because we haven't fully accepted all of our good and all of our bad, however we judge it, I feel, and I would love to hear your perspective on this, Corey, if I'm off somewhere, that like what we're aspiring towards, it's not fully grounded and showing up.
Yeah. And I know that when I look back on, say, this relationship or that one, and there was really unhappy, distasteful exchanges and all, and maybe I was being called names or whatever it was. And, my unhappiness really, when I look back, is that I put up with it. I didn't say stop. And I mean, sometimes I did say stop and it didn't help, but I didn't walk away. I didn't say, this is not how I want to be talked to, or I didn't really stand up for me and what the respect that I wanted to feel. And so that's where, if there's any kind of, anger at, it's really anger at me for not saying no to it and not saying I can't do this. I mean, eventually with those various relationships, we eventually got there, but the happiness that I have looking back is I didn't cut the cord soon enough, or I didn't shift it somehow, and I didn't have the skills. So I mean, I can be gentle with myself, and I can look back and go, oh my gosh, I put up with that because I didn't stand up for Corey, not because, I mean, they were just being their own selves. However, but anything that I can find useful is, what I did or didn't do.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. When I was in Peru for an ayahuasca ceremony about 2 months ago, and something that came through, and it was so powerful. It was a soul statement. I didn't think it, and it said, "Whatever you're angry about is you." And it sounds like that's exactly what you just said, Corey. And to me, I love the play on words. Like, whatever I'm angry about is me. So it's literally me, and what I'm angry about is I'm mad at myself for not stepping forward or having the courage or speaking my truth or whatever. And whatever I'm angry about is me. Whatever you're angry about is you.
Yeah.
It's a really empowering way to look at anger and go, oh shit, this is me trying to wake myself up to the things that are bothering me. And sometimes that takes a long time to get to a point when enough enough's enough. And I'm sure you see it with people that come to you for coaching. They've been maybe in a sexless marriage for 10 years, and 10 years in one day is too much,
Mm-hmm.
but 10 years was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to honor those moments of enough's enough.
Yeah.
And that's when we transform.
Yeah. And one of my great wake ups was in an ayahuasca ceremony, and I was not liking it at all. I wasn't having a good time. But at some point, I somehow got the thought that, oh, I can ask the medicine a question and it will answer me with truth. And so I asked, somehow I had that concept, and I asked, why am I so ill? I have all these maladies and unhappy things, and I feel like I'm kind of shrinking and slowly dying. And it just, the instant answer was, because you've wished that on someone else. I had someone, an ex-wife. I have three, and I just wanted her to just go away and never come back. And I was wishing ill on her. And so then but it was boomeranging to me. And so that was a huge, like, I better shape up my thinking.
What a hit.
Yeah.
That's a really a deep insight. I'm curious if there's anything you can share around, or you realize around, how our thinking patterns affect ourselves. In this case, it's like, hey, even though I'm thinking about someone else, but it actually affects you. I'm curious if you gained greater clarity around how that works.
Well, all I can say is that what I did after is I spent some time really, really thinking about this, and I did meditations clearing, forgiving her for everything she said, everything she did, everything she didn't do, everything she didn't say, and forgiving myself for the same. And I had to get I had to get that in my heart, not just in my head. I had to really believe it and feel it. Like, I really, release both of us from this, wounding cycle we were in, and co-wounding. And so once I was really to that place of feeling healed and feeling like I had taken personal responsibility inside my own heart for my part in it, I sat down and I wrote her a letter. And I just wrote, you know what? We both did stuff that we wish we hadn't. We both said things we wish we hadn't. And I release you from any and all, um, um, I have no bad feeling towards you. I forget what I actually said, and then I said, you don't owe me anything. I was such at fault that, of course, you would react the way you did. And I just said, you are free from any kind of obligation to me. Yeah.
I love that ability to let go of the past and forgive, and you can feel the energy just dissipate. I had a profound experience, maybe almost 10 years ago now. I was in a yoga training, and we're just doing some energetic work, and one of the women that I was doing work with ends up being an energy healer, right? And she goes, hey, I don't know what's up with you. I don't know what's up with your past, but I feel like someone's got some energetic cords locked into you. And I'm 30 years old. I don't know what the heck she's talking about. And okay. And then she goes, well, you want me to remove those for you? And I'm like, okay, I'm game. Sure. I have no idea what's going on. So she does all this woo-woo stuff, and she's pulling energetic cords out of my back and my hooks. And then 2 weeks later, I'm on a date with a woman, and she goes, hey, this is going to sound really weird, but you've got these weird energy hooks in you from a past partner. Do you want me to remove them for you? And I'm like, okay, I'm paying attention. So, she pulls out these hooks. And at this point, I hadn't heard from an ex-girlfriend for probably 2 or 2.5 years. We had a really tumultuous breakup. And within a week, I get a phone call from that partner. And she says, "Hey, Nick, I don't know what's up. I don't know why I'm calling you, but I just felt like I had to call you." And we had an hour or two conversation, releasing the past, releasing each other, apologizing. And 6 months later, I then met my now wife. And it was such this amazing moment of the energy that was holding me back physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I wasn't even aware of it, really. And other people could see it on me. But I'm like, this was so woo-woo when it happened. And I'm like, it's 100% reality for me. And it was a cool experience.
Yeah. Well, that is terrific. It's so, like, life has a way of taking care of itself. Things work itself out. Opportunities come. And if we have if our head is somewhere other than where we're, sitting, then we'll miss it. But life keeps coming and with opportunities. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's a deep experience, and going through that cycle, and just these what we often say synchronicities that come into play,
Mm-hmm.
and how something just gets resolved. I actually had a client mention yesterday that her wife had gifted him a car, nothing too fancy, but like they had a big anniversary, and the numbers of the license plate, without any involvement from them, were the first 4 digits were his birthday, and the last 2 digits was the number of years they've been married. And it's like there's at times it feels like there's something really off with life, like where things aren't aligning.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's moments like this where it's like, whoa, how did that just come into such alignment? Like the amount of things that would have had to happen, in the story that you just mentioned, Nick, for yourself, and something like what happened to this person with the license plate, is the amount of variables that are at play for those things to come together. It's like, no wonder you start to then have a sense of like, maybe life, after all of these things, all the ups and all the downs are happening for me,
Mm-hmm.
and not to me.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And sometimes we get those angelic winks to let us know just what you said. It's happening for you.
Mm-hmm. It's happening. Yeah, it's happening for you. Yeah, this so cool. I feel like we can talk about all these experiences forever. But Corey, to kind of bring it in for a landing, anything you'd like to leave us with, or our listeners with, around some tips or some insights around self-care, self-love? Love to hear kind of insights before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'd like to I'd like to say that we can each learn to call up the best part of ourselves in a moment. We're not our story, and the next right thing to do is more obvious when you're connected to your value and to what you value. And so that's really the process, is discovering your value and then taking a stand, hopefully in a graceful way, in a respectful way to yourself and others. Just say, I have a value for kindness. I have a value for safety. And so just when something doesn't match that, then say, I do whatever you need to do, say whatever you need to say, hopefully in a respectful manner, to move closer back in alignment with that value.
Yeah. Beautifully put, and very simple, and just I love the way you describe that. That's going to really help folks connect and absorb that fully. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Corey, Nathan, as always, and everyone listening. If you found this podcast useful, helpful, share it. We don't advertise, and our mission is to spread and increase the consciousness of the planet one conversation at a time. And we can't do that without the help of all of you listening and sharing this message. So, Corey, thanks for your time, and we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Conscious Conversations with Nick and Nitin.